Hello guys, it's been a while since I've been on here, so I thought I'd do a video letting you know where I'm still around and where I've been helping out my daughter and son-in-law. They're remodeling their apartment where they live, and I've been helping them out, and by the time I get done at the end of each day I am pretty much worn out, so I don't get a chance to really do a whole lot. In fact, what's on the bench right now is the Philco 4150. This is about as far as I got. Started polishing it, the chassis up, and after I get it pretty much done, and then I'll start working on the bottom end. There are a lot of rubber wires in here that need to be replaced, and get to that. I'll be making videos as we go along. It never fails though. Every time I get, no matter how pristine a chassis it is, it always ends up with at least one nasty little rust spot that stands out like a sore thumb. So I'll clean that up real good, get it look as shiny as possible, and then probably hit the whole thing with some like clear lacquer or something to protect it. Anyway, this does polish real easy, just using the mothers. It doesn't take much, and it kind of shines up. It needs some more work to it, and I got to finish it. So anyway, that's where I'm at on it. I did want to make this video to talk about a couple things. I have been watching some videos, although I've still got a lot of catching up to do on a lot of you guys. But one thing I wanted to mention was to talk a little bit about the difference between impedance and DC resistance. And to do that, I'll just pop up a schematic on this 150 here, and basically one thing I want to talk about is when you're looking at when you measure things and looking at DC resistance. Now here's the output transformer. It's push-pull circuitry, so it's got a center tap, feeds the B plus in, and then one side goes to one plate and the other side goes to the other plate. The total resistance across your DC wise is around 400 ohms. You know, they got about 450, but that's just rough. Their measurements can be off as much as 20% from what you might measure across there. In fact, what the actual resistance I measure on the one that's in here is around 410 across here, so it's close. Yet, as far as these two tubes are concerned, the 41s, from plate to plate, they're looking for 10,000 ohms. And that's basically what the impedance would be here, would be 10,000 ohms. But the DC resistance is around 400 ohms. Now, when you get on this side and you look at, say, the voice coil right here, virtually every speaker made back in the day, the voice coils were 3.8 ohms impedance, or roughly 4 ohms impedance. And yet, if you measure this, you'll probably get somewhere around 1 to 2 ohms. But that'd be DC. There's a big difference between DC resistance and impedance. Impedance is AC resistance. And I didn't bring the board out here, but basically I've shown you the formula before for impedance. Impedance is nothing more than taking the inductive reactance of the coil. It has inductance, it's an inductor. You take the inductive reactance, square it, add to any, if there's capacitance in the circuit, you add it to that capacity reactance squared, and then you add it to what resistance is in the circuit squared. You take the sum of all three squares, then square root it, and that gives you your impedance. Impedance, the AC resistance, which is known as impedance, is always higher than the DC resistance, in the fact that, unless it's just a pure resistive circuit, then it'll be equal. But if there's any inductors or capacitors, it's always going to be higher. So that's why the impedance on a speaker or on a transformer, primary or secondary or any of this, will always be higher than the DC resistance. So I wanted to clarify that a little bit, and I hope that did. The other thing I wanted to go on was, I was hoping I could get to this a little sooner, but I wanted to help out a friend on here, Zone 1242. His last video was on this radio that he's been working on, and he's having some troubles with it. If you haven't seen any of his videos, subscribe to him. He does great videos. He does a great attention to detail, and he's just a great restorer, and it's quite interesting, really good videos that he does. So if you haven't subscribed to him, subscribe to him. Which, any of you guys out there has got any idea why it states here subscribe? I am subscribed to him. I don't understand why that is showing up as subscribed, but I'll prove to you. Here's my people I'm subscribed to, and there he is. He's right there. You know why? It states here, it says subscribed, but here it says subscribe when I go to his videos. Anyway, must be something with YouTube. But anyway, back to what was going on. He's having troubles with the shortwave on the radio he's working on, and he's lucky enough to have another radio just like it that does work on the shortwave band, and so he can make some measurements. Now, what I want to talk about is he made a measurement on the radio that's working that I believe was across here, and it showed some resistance. Now that makes sense to me, that it should show something there. That's not an anomaly, or shouldn't be. One thing I would say to you, Zone, is that don't always completely trust a schematic. The way they're drawn may not exactly be the way the radio's working. So the first thing I would probably do in your case would be look at the radio that is working. Since it's working, I would trace out its circuitry. I'd trace out how all these coils are connected to the band switch. And being you got, I don't advocate actually tearing the radio apart or dismantling the one that's working. I know it's pretty tight in there to trace and see. I don't, advocate you taking apart, a radio that's working. But since the two radios are the same make and model and very little difference between them, especially in this circuit and the oscillator circuit, then the other one that's not working, you're probably going to have to dismantle it to get it working. So I would take it apart and look at how that band switch works. Not only check it, make sure it's clean, make sure it's good, and I know you already done that from the comments. One last little check was I'd just go ahead and do a continuity check on the switches as you rotate the band. Make sure everything appears to be connected. Where the band, you turn the switch and it looks like it should be connected, it is connecting and is making contact. Now, you can compare it to the schematic to make sure that it is exactly the way the schematic shows, but my suspicions are that there's some missing connectors or missing parts to this. See, under normal circumstances, when you've got multiple bands and multiple coils naturally to operate those bands, whether you're looking at, say, up here like the antenna coil or the oscillator coils, the coils that are out of circuit that you're not using are either shorted to themselves, in other words, they would bridge across here when the band switch closes, or they're taken to ground. And the reason for that is, if you don't do that, if they're left to kind of fend for themselves, they can actually interfere with the coil that's operating. Because as its field builds up, it can actually induce some current in here, even if the circuit's not completely closed. There is loops here, right here. You got two tank circuits. These can actually start acting up and feeding back and trying to trap some frequencies in here, and it can be enough to shut the oscillator off. That's why generally the standard procedure is to either short them out, the coils to themselves so they can't do that, or take them to ground so that anything that gets started building in here goes to ground. That's why I'm saying that your resistance you're reading here makes sense. Now, what you can do is try to trace out the radio that is working, see how it connects into the band switch as best you can without, seriously dismantling the working radio, and compare it to what you got. You also can compare that band switch and see what it's exactly doing when it's in short wave, medium wave, and long wave. Since these two are working, the medium and long wave, then the suspect is the short wave. The other thing is, depending on how much you dismantle this, and someone already mentioned that in the comments, that checking and making sure these coils are hooked up correctly in the proper direction. Because if one is flipped, it can either, at the very best, could throw off frequency. More likely an oscillator coil, it'll stop it from oscillating. So compare the two radios. Don't think that the other one that's working is something wrong with it because you're measuring resistance there. Actually consider that normal for the time being at the very least, and just compare the two and see any differences that you can find that may be there, and then hook up this radio, the one that's not working, as the other one is hooked up. And if the coils are good, the switch is making contact, and if it's hooked up exactly the way the other one that works, then it should work. Now, suppose, just for the sake of argument, that everything is connected correctly and everything's good and is doing what it should be doing. What else can be wrong? Well, anything in that circuit is suspect, including the tube. And I know you switch tubes between the working radio and the ones not working, but some radios, for whatever reasons, and there's a million variables here, some radios can get real particular about a tube, about the gain mainly of the triode that's the oscillator. And sometimes they can, just one radio, you could have 10 radios sitting there, all the same radio, and one of them, or even two of them, could be real particular about that tube gain. In other words, if the tube's just a tad bit weak, not want to work. That's a far shot. I'm not saying for you to go buy a new tube, just try it out. That's just a far shot. But I'd check anything in that circuit, make sure that there's absolutely no leakage at all, and that these capacitors are reading exactly what they should be within, plus or minus 20% tolerance, unless otherwise specified on the capacitor, you know, they're probably about a 20% or 10% capacitor. Make sure that resistor's good. The reason why I say these, and these could be out of tolerance, yet your medium and long wave bands could be working. The higher the frequency goes, the more stress it puts on the circuit. Plus, when capacitors get a little bit out of tolerance, it can actually cause problems that you'll notice in high frequency that you won't notice in lower frequencies. So just, you know, if you didn't replace these, check them. Even if you did, don't always expect that a brand new part is always good. There is a slim chance that it can be. And you know, the things I'm telling you just is when all else fails, you can't find anything else, then that's what you can start checking. Make sure L3 is good, or is working right, doing what it's supposed to do. Beyond that, you know, it's just basically checking stuff, even as simple as just making sure the tube pins are good and clean, and in the tube socket. Make sure that all the wires are solid, all connections are good, all that stuff. But the first thing I would do is compare the two radios and see what the difference between the two is. Find out why that difference there is. So that, I hope that helps you, or at least gives you some places to go and to look. But again, one thing I always want to emphasize, not always will a schematic be dead accurate. So just because the way the switch looks like it's working in here may not be exactly the way it's actually working in the real world. So don't always constantly trust it. You need to really look at that band switch and see exactly how it's making contact when in each band it's in, what contacts are being made, what they're doing, and so on. So anyway, I think that's about it. I just have not had a chance really to even, I've read a lot of your comments. I appreciate them. I am really sorry that it's just been such, the last couple of weeks have been so hectic that I've not been able to really even reply to any one of them. So here in about another week or so, I'll have some time. I want to make some catch-up videos on some various stuff, and I will make a video on another video on answering comments. Thank you guys for your patience. Just be patient with me. I'll get to everything and try to answer any questions too and stuff. So I think that's about all I've got for right now. I keep saying but anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks to the some new subscribers I've gotten in the recent days, and thanks for your comments. And just, I'll be back on here in about a week or so. So I'll see you then. You guys have a good week, and hopefully the weather's getting better where you're at. It got pretty cold here last couple of days. In fact, we even had frost warnings and stuff, so here in southern Iowa. So but now it's finally, maybe finally spring is coming, hopefully. So anyway, I'll be seeing you on the next video, and you all have a good week. Thank you.